So thank you for being here. I'm really passionate about entrepreneurship, and here also there is a few that's passionate about it. We looked into micro-credentials and entrepreneurship education. Would it work or would it not? With my co-author, Rachel, sitting there as well. So before I start, I wanted to pose this kind of scenario and say, if you had to enroll now for a 3 or 4 year degree currently in your life, considering balancing work, life, all of that, would you enroll for a 3 to 4 year degree? And for many, the answer is no. And what we want to look at is, but how do we get then? How do we accommodate that? So what if we then tailored something that's flexible, something that is relevant, something that's practical, and that can be designed around your schedule? And this is where micro-credentials comes in. And we really look at it, of course, from a South African perspective to say, how can we bring this in? So just to give a bit of context in terms of South Africa and the challenges that we face. So currently, we've got a very high unemployment rate. So it's currently around 31.9%. And if we look at graduates in particular, they complete a degree, but they don't get employed. So 9.6% of them actually end up being unemployed. And that's quite a big concern in South Africa in particular. And then if we look at SMEs, so SMEs, we currently have around 2.67 million SMEs, which is then employing 11.4 individuals in South Africa. And I mean, as with other countries as well, they're a big contributor to the GDP. So there's a lot of focus from governments, higher education institutions to really sustain and grow SMEs and see what can we do to better support them. But despite the contribution that they make in South Africa, we also see they've got a high discontinuation rate. So 7.9%, often we see within the first 3 years, they fail. And a lot of this main reasons, one is profitability and the lack of skills. How do you manage a business? Because we often say, I mean, running a business don't just require skills in marketing or HR. You are basically need to run everything. You need to know from A to Z. And we see that completing a traditional business degree does not prepare you sufficiently for running a business. So, and this is where we look at the statistics and say, but where can we get these educational programs? How can we accommodate and adapt these programs that can really help you equip our entrepreneurs with the necessary skills to grow and sustain their business? Now, if we look at higher education, I mean, we are from higher education, and having a higher education degree and gaining more skills can lead to higher employment as well as higher income. And that's, of course, why we have our students enrolling for this. However, also the previous presenter looked at formal, non-formal education. So if we look at informal learning, is now also contributing to employment. And it's now being seen as something more affordable. It is also less time-consuming than acquiring a traditional education degree of 3 to 4 years. However, earning a university degree is still one of the most credible and reliable indicators of knowledge. So we're sitting with this balance of having informal education that's working, but on the other side, we also have a university degree that is really credible. It shows the knowledge, it shows the skills and the intellectual capability of the individual. And this has led to the increase in micro-credentials. So just to give some background on it from our educational university, specifically the business school, there's a lot of requests from industry in particular to set up micro-credentials. And because they all this, and I'm going to talk about it a bit later on, but is the mismatch between what higher educations are offering and what industry is looking for. But what about the entrepreneurs? Because it might be different in your countries, but in South Africa, you know, I did an entrepreneurship degree and people look at me, but why? How do you study to become an entrepreneur? And that's perhaps the perception of entrepreneurship education in particular. And we've got a very small intake of students doing an entrepreneurship degree. So, and then if we look at those that's already up and running a business, they're not going to be enrolling for an entrepreneurship degree of 3 to 4 years. So now we want to look at, would they be interested in doing a micro-credential course through a higher education institution? So just a bit of a definition, you might be aware of micro-credentials, what it is. So micro-credentials, competency-based learning model that shows evidence. It shows a mastery of specific skills in a certain area, and it really focuses on a particular topic. So of course, compared to a traditional degree, you will cover a wide range of topics within that, and a micro-credential focuses on a short time frame that you would complete it. So if we would bring that back to the context of entrepreneurship, we would say it focuses on the skills of either developing an entrepreneurial mindset, but also developing the skills. What do you need to actually grow and sustain a business? What are those capabilities that's actually needed so that we can get beyond that 1 to 3 years when we see businesses are currently failing? So if we look at micro-credentials, it can or cannot be credit-bearing. So based on what other institutions are offering, and it can also be stackable. So to accumulate that, so at the end of the day, when you've done, for example, 10 micro-credential courses, that can accumulate to a qualification that you would receive over a certain time period. So to see what can we possibly, how can we bring this in? So that's also what this study aimed to do. So two of the theories that really relate to micro-credential in entrepreneurship, we look at the human capital theory. Education enhances skills and productivity, and that leads to a lifetime earnings of why are we actually investing? So the cost of this investment for your education. And then the signaling theory. What credentials actually do, it signals out to stakeholders, to customers, to investors that you know what you do. You have the skills, you have the capabilities, and that's quite important for entrepreneurs, especially if we look from an investment point of view, but also from a customer point of view. So that's quite handy when we look at micro-credential courses. So why the rise then in micro-credentials? So first of all, and this might also be particularly in South Africa, if we look at the high cost of traditional higher education qualifications, people can't afford the a 3 to 4 year degree anymore. Then the growing mismatch, I've mentioned this previously, between institutional offerings and industry needs. And we often see that in certain in specific qualifications that what we do in the classroom and what you actually do in the industry is really not the same. And this is also why we've seen an uptake request from industry when we work with these businesses to say, but can you not come up with micro-credential courses aiming, and we would even tell you what the course needs to focus on. Then also shifting learner preferences to being more flexible, efficient, skill-focused learning pathways. So we've also seen a change in that. And I think in particular for us after COVID, we've seen that that's a new trend where we're looking for that flexible option instead of the full face-to-face setting up. And then it's also generally shorter, and which is why we're looking at it can actually work really well for entrepreneurship if you consider the workload. And then if we look at competencies, as I said, it targets a specific area. So we can identify these skills and knowledge area beforehand when we set up these micro-credential courses. And then lastly, it's more adaptable in the curriculum. So often what we find to make changes to our curriculum, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy to make changes. It's a tedious and a long-term process. It doesn't happen overnight. So with a micro-credential, we have that flexibility to actually adapt this curriculum and compare to our traditional degrees. So with that being said, our main research question was, how do entrepreneurs and SME business owners perceive the effectiveness and practicality of micro-credentials in developing entrepreneurial and business management skills compared to traditional business degrees? And then our secondary questions that we were interested, so what factors would actually influence? Because we really want to understand if we want to design a micro-credential course for these entrepreneurs, what would actually influence them to decide to really enroll in this course? And then how they perceive the value of that in addressing specific business challenges for them. And then how then can higher education institutions actually integrate this? So to really look at some recommendations, we asked them to share how we can bring this in to better support the entrepreneurs and business owners. So in order to do that, we did a qualitative research approach using semi-structured interviews. We interviewed 10 SME business owners from South Africa, and then we used our thematic analysis just to analyze the data. And we had quite a variety of participants. So I just put a snapshot of it. I'm not going to go through all of it, but just to show the different areas of where the business owners are working in. And what was interesting is their level of current education. So only 2 of the participants had no formal qualification. But if you really start to look at the qualification that they did many years ago, because some of them have been in business, 10, 15, 25 years, compared to what they're doing now, it's not necessarily the same. And a lot of them actually said, actually had to think, what qualification did I do? And said, but it actually has nothing to do with the business that I'm currently in. And argued that it didn't really prepare them at all to start a business. Because, there's someone that did a diploma in music, for example. He said, well, I did it, so I'm just going to share it. No relevance whatsoever to what I'm currently doing. So that was just quite an interesting observation. So we identified 3 main themes. So first of all, we looked at awareness and understanding of what micro-credential is according to them. We also looked at then, of course, the perceived value and the relevance, because that just immediately came up. Value, what is the value and the relevance thereof? And then how will this be offered? And then, of course, we did ask for recommendations. Is, what should higher education institutions actually do? So quite shockingly, perhaps not, is that 8 out of the 10 participants did not know what a micro-credential course was. So only 2 confidently said, yes, I know what it is. So with that, of course, we explained what a micro-credential is. And then after it was explained, 4 of them said, oh, yes, I have completed it. I did a LinkedIn course, or I did a Microsoft short course, or on Udemy, I think I did something like that. And that's immediately what they associated with the micro-credentials when it was explained. So this immediately was around awareness of what is micro-credentials and what it actually offers. So when we explain it, we ask, okay, now that you know what a micro-credential course is, would you actually be interested in enrolling for one? And immediately everyone confidently said, yes, we definitely do it. So we asked them, okay, but why? And what are the factors that would really play a role for you? If we said tomorrow, let's go, let's implement or bring this in and how you can join, what factors would contribute? So 4 main things, 4 main things came out. First one was the time, because all of them said, I am the business. If I have to go out 3 hours a day, I can't do that. So how will this be offered? And how long will it take for me to complete this? So time came out, and then value. So value and relevance was saying, okay, but I'm not just going to do any course. It has to relate to something that I'm currently experiencing in my business. And I'm going to touch on that to say what is some of those things. So what relevance would it have for me currently in my position? And then the cost. Because all of them said, right, but what is this going to cost me? We know that university degrees are often expensive. Is it worth investing in this micro-credential course, considering the cost versus the value that we get out? So with that being said, we asked them, so just share general, what are some of the business challenges that you experience as a business owner? So these were, some of the things that came up, but quite a few said admin. Just simply keeping the business going, and people management. So from setting up contracts, handling disputes, all of this saying, but no one ever taught me how to do this. What is the things that I need to register for when I have employees? Then compliance. So from the get-go, starting registering a business. And they said, people just assume that you know when to register the business. What is it when we get to tax season? What is it that's required? And you would think that there's things people know this, but it's not. I don't know that. No one taught me. I just had to figure that out along the way. And then all of the participants indicated marketing. So they said, especially now in the digital age, how do we actually market the business? Some of them are in very saturated industries. So how do we effectively market the business? Strategic planning to say, do we actually have a strategy in place? And then IT systems, have everything up and running. A lot of them are selling online. They have challenges. They don't know how to design a website. And they say, yes, we can outsource it, but it's costly to outsource. So all of this needs to run, but these are some of the main challenges that we are experiencing. So this was quite an interesting statement of one of the participants. You need different skills and knowledge at different times in your business life cycle. So for example, right at the beginning, you might not necessarily know how to scale your business, but you need to know the basics of setting up a business. So, and what you can argue to say, but during this business life cycle, you need a different micro-credential course that will actually help you within that particular life cycle. And from the get-go, you might not know that you need to know this in 5 years' time. So why is it important for me to enroll? So they said it comes down to what is it that I need now and to enroll for such a micro-credential course then. So we asked them, so if you had to enroll currently, considering the business challenges you've mentioned, which ones would you actually enroll? So of course, marketing, admin, HR, finance, broadly put, and then leadership. To say we actually need to run the business, we work with people to act in that leadership position. So these are some of the areas that you could start in developing these micro-credential courses to address the challenges that they are experiencing. So one back. So the one participant said that, you know, it's more valuable doing a micro-credential course than a traditional course because it covers a broad range of knowledge and a micro-credential addresses specific business needs. And the one participant, which didn't have any formal education, stated that most degrees will push you into a certain direction. But a micro-credential can give you that specific knowledge that's relevant to your business. And that's why we would rather opt for a micro-credential course compared to a traditional business degree. So then moving on to the second one is looking at recognition and accreditation. So with a micro-credential, you would get, for example, a digital badge or badge that you completed it or some sort of certification. So as we said, from a higher education point of view, it's credible to have a degree from a university that is accredited. So we ask them, you know, how important really is accreditation and recognition? So if you had to do this micro-credential course, would it actually add value that it comes from a university, you know, in South Africa? Because as we said, a micro-credential signals that skill, that credibility that you have completed a certain course compared to, you know, your traditional one. So then we looked at the different industries and it was all over. So some of them said, yes, immediately very important. Others said, not as important. So beauty, so it was having a hair and nail salon, saying, of course, that's important. You know, people want to know that you know what you are doing, education, and then motor repair, say, I actually know, you know, how to do it. Where others said, no, you know, skills acquisition is more important than accreditation. I don't need a piece of paper to show that I know what I'm doing. Rather, it's about the skills and the knowledge. So those within media, public relations, and textile said skills acquisition is more important in terms of accreditation. And then just to also share what one of the participants said, personally, it's not very important for me. I value knowledge over formal recognition and certificates. So if I had to do a micro-credential, it would not be because it's through a higher education institution, simply because it's got value and relevance. So for them, but as I said, across the participants, so it would be worth exploring more, you know, obviously, increasing the sample size to get a different perspective. And then we asked them in terms of the preferred format and delivery. So I don't want to say it's not too much of a surprise. Online is preferred. Some did indicate face-to-face, and that links with the networking to say this would be an ideal opportunity to network with other SME business owners where we can actually share similar experiences. So for them, it's not just about doing the course, but actually that engagement with others as well. And then one was very specific, saying, you know, Saturday session, I don't have time during the week. At night, I'm going to be too tired. If you do it Saturday, 6 to 8 weeks, and it's a few hours, then more than happy to do it. And we only focus on one topic, one skill within that period. So, but for me, when I saw it, it was considering, you know, the sample business owners, it was not as of a surprise. All right, and then just to finish up, and I thought I'm going to be in time, is recommendations for higher education institutions. So we asked them, you know, what can we do? First of all, relevance, of course, to the industry. The practicality said, please, we don't want theory. Okay, we definitely want to move away from that. Then it must be aligned with their business needs. They said, I'm not just going to do a course what is there. If it's not a need at this point in my business, I'm simply not going to do it. Creating awareness, say, but you know, we don't know about these courses. So what is it that you offer? What value does it give to me as business owner? I've mentioned networking opportunities, and then interesting one, gamify to appeal for the younger generations. So, and the university should adapt to the environment and the industry to attract more people. And that's important to keep up with the trends, what's happening, and how we move from there. So then in conclusion, I wanted to end off with this quote of the participant to say, because generally people assume there's no point in getting education if you're going to be an entrepreneur. If you're going to work for yourself, what's the point? So she simply said, make education fashionable again for entrepreneurs. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Yeah.